Hello, Maverick fans. Welcome to another edition of the Mavpuckcast. Jon is here with me. We have some games from Western Michigan to talk about. Maybe a little controversy sprinkled in there for all of you fun fans looking for something to argue about online. Jon, how are you doing?
We're at that point in the season, Jason. I've alluded to this on recent episodes, and I feel bad about doing it. Look, I love talking about UNO hockey. I love going to the games, love following these guys on the team. But when February rolls around, I'm just, in a way, I'm like, when it comes to all of this stuff, the podcast, the social media, I'm just kind of over it. So that's where we're at this point. But we're going to do the best that we can. And I'm certainly getting tired of talking about road series, Jason. I'm going to tell you, we're going to have to start going on road series here again because the team might need us, Jason.
I
But
They seem to play better when we're there too. So how about those founding members that need to we need to beef those up maybe a little bit here to support our addiction and our need to go on the road with the team.
yeah, we would like to thank our founding members for their support of the Mavpuckcast this season. As I am talking, you are seeing a scroll of the names of those who have donated to the Mavpuckcast and Mavpuck.com this season. The scroll will also appear at the end of each episode of the Mavpuckcast. And if you would like to support what we're doing here, a donation of $18 on the website will get that done. Visit mavpuck.com/donate to join. Jason, we got to talk about that Western Michigan series. And after the last two road series, I don't know about you, but I am not I'm not enjoying talking about these road series lately. We've had two road series, one at Denver, and then this last weekend against Western Michigan, against two good teams in the NCHC. So it's tough to go on the road and play in those barns normally, but both of those teams are solid this season. And going into that Friday game, first period Friday, looked good early. 5:42 into the first. Brock Bremer puts UNO up 1-0. Assist to Glenn and Rollwagon. Brock made that shot as he was falling. And Jason, this line has been a really intriguing line the last few weeks. It's kind of a grindy, get under your skin line with Glenn, Rollwagon, and Bremer on it.
Yeah, they're definitely a group of hard workers, and the terminology a lot of times is they fight above their weight belt, and that's a group that has been looking for some success. They've had some dry spells this season, and lately they've been kind of our energy line. We throw them out there, it kind of gets things going, and I've noticed Coach a lot of times will follow that up with Erdal's line or Harrison Israel's line, and those kind. A lot of times just kind of gets them going and gets the scoring moving for Omaha. So it was nice to see them say, we don't need those guys coming in after us. We can take care of this ourselves.
Yeah, I think it was on last week's episode, or not last week's episode. I think it was on during last week's press conference that Coach Gabinet was talking about those guys who play with a lot of heart and how important that is to the team and how much he really appreciates the contribution of those guys. So, yeah, they've been having some success as of late. So it's 1-0. UNO after one. Then we go into that second period. 5:39 into the second. Eero Hakkarainen ties it up for Western Michigan. He's one of two players from Finland on that Western Michigan team, a very talented forward. And then 12:39 into the second, Joona Väisänen puts the Broncos up 2-1. Certainly not the position UNO wanted to be in the second. Rough period for UNO. And the Broncos really did a good job kind of clogging us in the neutral zone during that period. And quite honestly, during both of the games this last weekend.
Yeah, there were a lot of turnovers for Omaha that led to some scoring chances in the second. We just really couldn't get any sustained pressure. And that just, especially against teams like Western that are that talented, they play a good system and they're going to penalize you by scoring goals. And that's what they did in the second. They were definitely the better team second period Friday night.
Yep. So it's 2-1 Western after two. And then we go into that third period, hoping UNO can narrow the lead, tie it up, get back in the game, maybe get back on top. And it looked good early. 28 seconds into the third, Jimmy Glynn ties it up. Again, like we were talking about earlier, that line has brought a lot of energy to the team. So great for UNO to tie things up. 28 seconds into that period, but 5:58 into the third, Alex Bump, very talented forward for Western. He originally committed to Vermont, ended up at Western, puts Western up 3-2 on the power play. Jason, we're down by a goal at that point. And then 9 minutes into the third, Cam Newble puts the Broncos up 4-2. It's a bad turnover in our defensive zone that led to that. And at that point, almost midway through the third period, we're down 2 goals. I was worried how it was going to go the rest of the way.
Yeah, I was worried because we weren't generating a ton off the rush, the transition game that's kind of been the key to success for UNO. I say this season, but like this year, the 2025 part of the season. It's been that transition game that's really generated our offense, and Westerns, they play a good system that kind of hems you in. We needed that first pass, and that wasn't really working for us. So we were really looking for something to energize this team, something to kind of get them up on their emotion side of things. And you really felt like if we didn't score early in that second half of that third, like if we didn't really kind of get one back quick, that it might just be too much of a hill to climb against a very talented Western Michigan team.
Yeah, 11:36 into the third. Glenn narrows the lead 4-3. A nice pass by Stang to set that up. Man, Jimmy Glenn has had a nice run here the past couple of weekends. And then late with Simon Lacozy pulled and with a man advantage on the power play, Gavin scores from the blue line to tie it 4-4. Western had something like a 42 penalty kill streak going into this game, 40-42 or something, penalties that they had successfully killed off. So we successfully killed off that streak at the end of regulation. So it was 4-4, the end of regulation, Jason.
It was interesting on that because they kept saying it on the broadcast, and I kept telling Jolene, I'm like, they're jinxing it. They're going to jinx it. They're going to they keep saying it. And after our power play goal, the announcer's like, well, maybe I jinxed it. I'm like, yes, you did. Keep your mouth shut. You don't talk about those things.
That's right. Jason and I understand hockey superstition very well. We are masters of it. So UNO's going to that 3-on-3 overtime period. UNO just wasn't really able to get anything going early on there. In a minute 4 into OT, Western's Univisinen gets the game winner. It was sort of a fluky goal off an arcing shot that went in. I don't even know if Simon saw that puck coming his way. So they end up getting the overtime victory 5-4. UNO gets 1 point out of a possible 3, but Western Michigan gets that extra point in the 3-on-3 overtime period, Jason.
Yeah, we've had a lot of success this year in the overtime period in that 3-on-3, and it was bound to come back to bite us at some point in time. But commend the guys for fighting back. They played a really good third period. They fought hard, and so you're kind of thinking like, okay, so let's do more of it on Saturday night, and maybe come away with. You're really looking at coming away this weekend with 3 points. That was, if you want to stay in the race for the NCHC for home ice, if you want to stay in the race for trying to get in the NCAA tournament, it was really going to take a split that weekend, and so it was looking like to do that we were going to have to win on Saturday or make it to overtime and win overtime on Saturday to get those 3 points.
Absolutely right, Jason. So we go into that Saturday night game. I know we were all hopeful. I talked last week's episode about how Western Michigan is split time between their 2 goaltenders, Cam Rowe, who's a 5th-year player for them, very talented goalie, and then their freshman goaltender, Hampton Slukinski. So it was Slukinski on Saturday night. The freshman got in net, but it was a rough start to the game. You look toward the end of that first period, 14:31 into the first. Zach Naring puts Western up 1-0, and then less than a minute later, 15:25 into the first, Garrett Sidlowski puts Western Michigan up 2-0. Ooh, it was a tough position to be, and then that period, Jason, just it ended weirdly, like with less than a minute to go. Western Michigan got a penalty shot opportunity because it was determined that one of our players, other than Simon Lacosi, covered the puck in the crease. I can't remember if it was Broberg who did that or one of the other defensemen, but ultimately he missed the penalty shot. But Jason, what did you think of that penalty on UNO, and what did you think of the penalty shot?
I mean, there's not much to think about it. It's black and white. They didn't call it on the ice. They went and reviewed it. They looked at it and they said he covered the puck with his hand, and you can't do that. And it sucks for the player. Like, I know you're down there, you're scrambling, you're just trying to, get something to happen, but you got to understand you can't put your hand on it. What's crazy is, like, there's a lot of other things you could do that are all legal, which is just insane. But that one is the one that's not legal, and so um, you know, I I wasn't surprised by the call because it is a, fairly black and white kind of thing, and so it just came down to Simon needed to be big for us and come up with that save, and that really kind of kept us in it, thinking like, okay, we're down two, but at least we got a chance at this. Down three, especially the way we were playing in that first, like we came out flat. There was no energy. There was really nothing that UNO had going for him in that first period on Saturday night, and so you're really just kind of hoping you could get to the locker room with something that was manageable for the rest of the game.
At the end of the first period, Harrison Israels, our talented center, got injured on a face-off against Western Michigan's Tim Washi. Boy, people were talking about this a lot online. And I went back and I filmed it slow motion on my phone from the Western Michigan broadcast. Jason, I always let you handle these situations on the podcast. What did you think of that sequence of events?
I mean, I hate it because there's no reason to do that. There's from a face-off perspective, like, you diving for a guy's knee is not gaining you an advantage in winning that face-off. Like, you need leverage, you need your stick out there. You've taken enough face-offs in your career that you know how to take a face-off. Like, your stick's not going to be down by your feet if you're trying to win the puck, and yet he doesn't move his stick. He leaves it right there. He knows he's going in there. You know that you got a good chance of injuring someone. Was it intentional? I don't think so. I don't think that he said, I'm going to go out and in this draw, I'm going to take out, one of their best players. But I also think that he knew what he was doing. He knew that there was a likelihood that what he did resulted in an injury, and it did. It's I hate it because, like, this is the kind of thing that you see from Western. Like, you saw the kneeing penalty on Friday night. These kinds of, like, dirty little plays that they know, there's a likelihood, not a high likelihood, but there's a chance that it's going to hurt someone, and we're still going to go out and do it. And the course of play, like, I get that you're cutting across the middle and you get someone with your knee. That happens. It sucks. Everyone feels bad. Usually the player comes out and says, like, that was not my intent. I didn't mean to lean into him, things like that. And like, you don't hear that from Western. You hear, like, oh, you're just sore because you lose and all that jazz from the peanut gallery and stuff. And I think the players should stand up for it. Like, what was your intent? Did you mean to? No. Fine, come out and say that. Like, but that's not what we get. And it's Western, so they're not gonna, the NCHC is not gonna do anything about it. They're not gonna come back and say, like, oh, that was, clearly an intent to injure, despite the fact that literally, like, a week or two ago, the NHL handed down a 10-game suspension because the guy cross-checked into another player, and it resulted in the guy getting cut, and that was it. Like, he got some band-aids and he was back on the ice and it was no big deal, but that was worth a 10-game suspension in the NHL. But, a guy going for a guy's knee in a face-off draw, that's just a fair game here in the NCHC.
Yeah, definitely an unfortunate sequence of events. And yeah, we have no idea. No idea what the status of Harrison Israels is. His teammates helped him off the ice after that, and he wasn't back in the game. So we don't know his status. We've contacted UNO Sports Information to get more clarification on how he's doing, and we haven't heard anything. So.
The only saving grace for Omaha is at least it comes before our break. That it's not like he's got 5 days to rehab. If it is a little tweak or something, then maybe he'll be okay for the Arizona State series in 2 weeks. The problem is that that's the kind of injury that that could end a guy's career kind of thing. Those kinds of knee injuries can be very difficult to come back from if they're serious. And so, I hope the best because he has been one of our players and he's been a really nice guy. He's been fun to get to know this season. I'd hate to see his season end that way. So wishing him the best, like you said, we're hoping that it's not that bad. But we won't know. Sounds like for a while, how he's doing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And as you mentioned, we have the week off coming up. We have heard rumblings that potentially Tanner Ludke could be available for that Arizona State series, but we've heard nothing definitive about how he's doing, how the rehab has gone from his injury. So we'll just have to see. UNO's down 2-0 going into the second. This one was rough. 6:04 into the second. Alex Bump puts the Broncos up 3-0. A tough neutral zone turnover led to that goal. And then 7:25 into the second. So about a minute 20 later, Robbie Drasner puts Western Michigan up 4-0. The shot came in from the slot. And I think we knew how this was going to go, Jason. Saturday night. It was 5-1. Western Michigan after 2. Stain got a goal late in the period. But
and then Western answers right back after that. So, you thought you might have some momentum going into the locker room with Stang's goal, but it just that quick comeback kind of goal that's hurt. And the second period looked like what I feared with the injury going into it. You needed these guys to respond, and respond in a big way and take the game back to Western, and they just kind of sat back and let Western come at them. And then they started making mistakes, and Western's good enough to penalize you for that by scoring. And that's kind of the way the second period went again. And, it's unfortunate. It's 2 times now that we've had a good game against a quality opponent on Friday night and then kind of let the air out of the bag on Saturday. So hopefully the guys can bounce back from this.
Yeah, exactly right. So hopefully we find a way to get home ice for the playoffs because we do not want to play a Saturday night game on the road coming up here. Jesus, rough. So yeah, Western went on to win the game 6-1. So UNO gets 1 out of a possible 6 points up in Kalamazoo at Lawson Ice Arena this weekend. Some series notes. And again, Jason and I tend to be very level-headed, positive guys, so I'm not trying to, but there's some things we got to point out here. The Mavs have only won 1 game this season against teams currently in the top half of the NCHC standings. And that game, Jason, was at Arizona State on November 15th. So that's, stuff. We got a couple more opportunities here in the regular season with Arizona State and North Dakota. Try to have some success there. But Jason, we gotta be down. I think we're both down because of Harrison Israels, but we'll be fan. The weather, the weather we're having right now in Nebraska is
all
awful.
Snow, yeah.
Yeah, terrible. But
are we going to talk standings right now, or we want to talk standings in a little bit?
No, we got to talk about our players of the week.
Okay, fine. Talk players of the week.
Jason,
do I have to go first?
Yeah, you do have to go first.
Dang it.
So I expect
Uh,
something really creative here, Jason, because that's kind of become your meme.
I know the hard part is like this is kind of like the Denver where it's like you just really want to throw everything out.
I know.
Um, the best I can come away with is I'm gonna say Harrison Israel's. I thought he was definitely one of our better players on Friday. And I would have liked to see what this team could have done with him still in the lineup on Saturday. And so I don't know that we would have won. I don't know that this team could have pulled it out, honestly. But I just think like he means so much to this team, and you can kind of tell the way that they played changed quite a bit in the second period on Saturday. I think a lot of that has to do with losing a guy like Harrison, and so somewhat of a feel better soon pick, let's say. Also because there's not a whole lot like guys had to, this was one of those things, John. I'm curious how you're going to pick now because I didn't give you an obvious choice like we have in the past, but like guys had, a decent game on Friday. And then that same player just didn't seem to have anything on Saturday. Simon I thought was okay on Friday, not stellar. But certainly not bad at all. But then he gets pulled on Saturday, and so it's like, who do you pick? So good luck to you, John.
Well, I want to echo your sentiments about Harrison Israels. He has been a key part of UNO's success in the second half of the season. He's been playing well with former UAF teammate Brady Risk. So yeah, he's an important part. Those two players have provided a lot of spark for UNO in the second half of the season. So we hope he's doing well. Both he and Brady made the decision to come back for one more year and transfer to UNO together. And those guys are in their mid 20s, and we're excited to see what's ahead for them beyond playing for UNO here when the season ends, and what we might see from them playing minor league hockey, et cetera, down the road. So hopefully everything's okay with him, but we'll just have to see. I'm going to go with graduate forward Jimmy Glynn because he had 2 goals and 1 assist on Friday. And he also had 2 goals during the Minnesota Duluth series last weekend as well. And as we've talked about, when you look at that line he's playing on with Bremer and Rollwagon, they have been a key part of UNO's success in the second half this season. So Jimmy Glynn, he's one of those grinders. We don't talk about him probably as much as we should, but he is the epitome of kind of a Gabinet guy. Like that's a Mike Gabinet forward right there.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
All right. Okay, Jason. This has been an interesting episode so far, but that is
you want to rant about now, John?
What do we want to rant about now? Well, now we're talking about the NCHC standings and pairwise rankings.
Ew.
And yeah,
Pairwise doesn't look good for us.
Well, we'll
talk NCHC standings.
Well, we're talking about that first, but we'll talk about pairwise just in case anybody's wondering. Currently, Western Michigan is first place in the NCHC with 45 points in the conference race. Arizona State is second with 40 points, and UNO is sitting at third with 38. And then behind us by 7 points is North Dakota. So right now, those are your top 4 teams in the conference, but it's close. You got Denver sitting down there in 5th place, 1 point behind North Dakota, and you have Colorado College in 7th place with 29 points. So that's an interesting race right now. UNO's got some distance between the 4th, 5th, and 6th place teams in the conference race. But it's anybody's guess. who will finish in the top half. The fact of the matter is, North Dakota, Denver, and Colorado College all have a chance to finish in the top half. We've got to find a way to get some points here the next couple of weeks, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, we don't. Every game basically can take away a floor for us. Realistically, we still could finish seventh, so that's still out there for us, unfortunately. And so, the saving grace, and I think the message from the coaching staff to the players is going to be, we still control our destiny. You've got Arizona State, in-house. You don't know what Western's going to do through the rest of the season, but I would argue they probably are going to finish first. I'd be surprised if they don't, with what they have left in that. And so, you got a chance to be, number two in the conference, and you can do that with winning hockey here. And so, you're battling with Arizona State. You got them coming to town. You got a chance to really make a statement, put up 6 points there, and that could be huge for us, because that would take us to 44 points, and that would pretty much put just about all of the teams, possibly depending on how Denver does with their extra games this weekend. You could be in a position where that would, 2 wins versus Arizona State at home would be the guaranteed home ice for us.
Yeah,
So a lot to play for the guys, a lot of reason to go out and say we need our best effort right now.
and as you mentioned, UNO controls their own destiny. They have an opportunity to get against Arizona State at Baxter Arena, and UNO has had success in the confines of Baxter Arena this season. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but it could turn into one of those scenarios, Jason, where we're playing North Dakota for the last home playoff seed going into the NCHC playoffs when we play them the last weekend of the regular season.
I Right now, the way it looks, like, you look at who Denver plays, and they basically play the basement teams in the not the basically they play the basement teams in the NCHC. Like, they have Miami and, was it
St.
Miami
Cloud.
and St. Cloud, I think,
Yeah.
and then Colorado College to finish
Yeah.
their season, right? So, like, you're looking at Denver going, like, they got a good chance of running the table here. I would not be surprised, depending on how we play against Arizona State. I would not be surprised if the games in North Dakota are not determining who we play. It's just a question of, does North Dakota come to Omaha, or do we have to go back up there back-to-back weekends to play them? And so that could be tough. And I think that, again, it goes back to, the thing that matters is the game that's in front of you right now. You have to look at Arizona State and say, they're ending their season coming to Omaha. They play this weekend, they play against us, and then they finish sitting. So we know where they're going to be. We know what we need to get to them, right? We know we need X number of points, or we've got to win both to stay within a chance of overtaking them or something. Like, the good thing is that we're going to go into that game knowing what we need. But it just comes down to execution. This team is talented enough to beat Arizona State at home twice. I think they're talented enough to beat a lot of teams, and have proven that they can beat teams when they play their style, play their game, execute at a high level, and don't shoot themselves in the foot and make mistakes. I would argue we have one of the best goaltenders in the league and in the entire NCAA. And certainly the best, I think, in the league, with Simon Lacosi, the way he's played this season. And so you know that he will always give you a chance to win, but we've got to generate offense. We've got to play a hard game. We need the guys to kind of grind them out. We need the defense to get pucks to the net. Like, we've talked about this stuff all season long. We need transition games. We need quick movements through the neutral zone. We need first pass out of the zone. These are all things that we talked about that we did not do either game at Western. That they're going to need to come up and say, we got to pull up our breezers and say, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it as a team, and we're going to do it right now.
Yeah, lots of opportunity for the team ahead. It'll be interesting to see what happens here down the stretch. And Jason, got to talk about the pairwise rankings. I know you don't want to talk about them, but last week, I think we were 27th in the pairwise, 26th or 27th. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. Currently, we're 30 in the pairwise rankings, as we've talked about, and everybody else online has talked about. UNO is really going to need to play their way into the NCAA tournament. So it's important to try to get themselves in the best position they can in the NCHC playoffs to be able to do that. As I mentioned before, it's an odd year in the pairwise rankings. And Brad Schlossman, who's the beat writer for the Grand Forks Herald, was talking about this on Twitter again today. Right now, North Dakota is 19th in the pairwise rankings. Ahead of them at 18th is New Hampshire. And I screenshot his tweet here so I could get it right. But he's like, North Dakota is number 19 in the pairwise rankings. The team one spot ahead of the Fighting Hawks is 3-12-3 in Hockey East and 1-9-1 in the last 11 games, New Hampshire. Like, that's how crazy the pairwise rankings are. And that just illustrates how.
And they don't have a winning record, if I remember right? New Hampshire's like a game or two under. That's crazy to think that North Dakota is sitting there behind a team that doesn't even have a winning record. In like an overall winning record, let alone a winning record in their conference.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? I mean, and that just illustrates how it's math. The human element really isn't involved. They must have, and I didn't follow them closely. They must have run the tables in their non-conference schedule to be winning certain comparisons. But as you mentioned, 11-13-4 overall, 3-12-3 in the conference. They are last place, last place in Hockey East, yet they're within spitting distance of the top 14 in the pairwise rankings, Jason.
I think the saving grace is that, and it's always been kind of the nice thing about college hockey is that there's not a human element to it. So you're not dealing with someone saying, well, I think they're better than so and so, and therefore my opinion matters. Your opinion doesn't mean crap.
I'm sorry. I'll tell you, Jason, I'm not sure mentally I could deal with those incessant discussions on social media.
Oh my gosh.
About how the voters are not voting UNO in the right place, or they're not voting teams. Like, it would be nuts. But this just takes, again, the guessing game out of it. Now, I will say, from the perspective of this podcast and this perspective of sports discussion, when you look at college football and you look at college basketball, part of what sports talk radio, for example, is all about is discussing the maneuverings in the polls and things like that, and how this team should have been ranked higher. And they can talk for hours on end about that. So that is one thing that we can't talk about, because there's no argument here. North Dakota is a better team than New Hampshire, and Omaha is a better team than New Hampshire, but both teams are lower in the pairwise rankings. And that's just the way the pairwise rankings work. There's no human being that's going to go in there and tweak that, because they like to maintain the purity of the system. So
I think what they need to do, John, though, is they need to expand.
What are your thoughts?
If there was ever a reason, and I know I texted this to you, if there was ever a season that said the NCAA has to figure it out and stop with this stupid 16 out of 60?
64 currently.
Yeah. Like, that's just insane. We should have more teams in the NCAA tournament. I think you could easily. I've heard the argument that the easiest thing to do is just to add 4 more teams and bring it to 20 and have every bracket has a play-in game to play first. Like, great. Like, you've got 2 extra games that you get one. I think the argument for bringing it to a campus site in the first round is I think a better play for that, of being able to say, like, hey, let's bring in some tourism dollars to whoever the top 4 seeds are, at least, and then the Frozen Four stays in a neutral site kind of thing. But yeah, I think you bring in at least 4 teams, if not bringing in extra brackets. I think, there's some good teams in here when you start looking into those, 14 through 25 kind of ranges, where there's winning teams that have, Clarkson's sitting at 18-9-3 and they're 21. They
Yeah.
don't they're not even close to getting in, and they've got a significant winning record, and so who's, who's in, who's out. I just think that you've got a better shot to say, like, let's give some teams a chance and see, because who doesn't love the Cinderella story? Like, what if, I remember back, like, I don't know if you remember this, a long time ago, not a long time ago. It makes me sound like really, really old. It really wasn't that long ago. The LA Kings made, literally on the last day of the regular season, won their game, had just enough points to get into in the Stanley Cup playoffs as an 8 seed. And if I remember right, they swept, I can't remember if they swept their first 2 rounds or they swept 2 of the 3 on their way to a Stanley Cup. The Cinderella story, the team that gets in to the NCAA tournament on the last day of the season because they beat, so and so, and now they've got just enough to get them into the top 20, and they run the tables, and like that's exciting, and I think that college hockey could use that kind of excitement.
Well, and you look, they've added some of those kind of playing games to the college basketball tournament. And you don't want to go too far. I know that people are like, if you add too many teams with only 64 teams, and it'll be 63 next season because AIC is dropping down to Division Two. The concern is like if you had 32 teams, which would make it an even number, right? That, it's half the teams in Division One hockey, and then it's just the participation ribbon type of thing. But the 20 teams is interesting because if the 2 lowest seeds in each of the 4 regionals had to play in to face the number 1 seed, that could potentially be interesting. And as you alluded to, you could do that if you were doing campus sites, because it would mean an extra day of games. And so rather than doing it at an AHL facility or some other minor league or junior hockey facility or whatever it is, rather than having to pay for an extra day of rental and staff and everything like that. It's a campus site one. You're not paying for the facility rental. Certainly you'll have staff, but if it's a 1-game play-in game in each of those regionals, it could make it interesting. And as you mentioned, it would give an opportunity for some of these teams that are just outside to get into the tournament. And that could be really interesting. And it would open up
And I mean, you're at a time where it wouldn't be a bad idea to say, like, Thursday through Sunday, you've got, college hockey, because right now they play, was it, is it Thursday, Saturday, Friday, Sunday, right? Isn't that how they break them up? So they always have a day off in between, I think.
Yes, they changed that. It used to be 2 days back to back. Now there's a day in between. And I kind of railed against this on the season finale of the Mavpuckcast after we came back from Sioux Falls. I'm like, why did I have to spend that day doing nothing in Sioux Falls, South Dakota? No offense to the fine folks of Sioux Falls. We found some fun stuff to do, but I liked the regionals when it was back-to-back days. But now, because the coaches complained and they wanted a day off and time to prepare, it is a day off between, like it is for the Frozen Four. So yeah.
See, I think you just go back to 2 sites are going to be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and 2 sites are going to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and like,
Yeah.
great. You've got attention to that those 2 games that are on Thursday, the play-in games. You're sprinkling in the play-in games on a Friday with some meaningful hockey on a Friday. You're going to have an amazing slate on Saturday with so many teams being, in play, and like, I just think from a television standpoint, it's going to be great. And like you said, they're smaller venues.
Yeah. No,
And
I love the NCAA tournament, Jason, when it was uh Friday, Saturday, Saturday, Sunday, because that Saturday day, it would just be like college hockey overload. And it was amazing because we would do watch parties for those Saturday games. And then when they spread it out a little bit more, it wasn't quite as amazing because there were fewer games on each of those days. So I would like to potentially go back to that at some point. I don't know if they ever will. Maybe if they go to home sites, they'll consider doing that. I don't know. Coaches complain about that, but it would be interesting to talk about expansion. So we'll have to see if those discussions come up, depending how things shake out here at the end of the season, and what teams get in and what teams are left out of the NCAA tournaments. Yeah, could be a fun discussion. Certainly, we will be discussing it more as the weeks progress here, because because it is kind of crazy this year. Some seasons it tends to work out really well, but this is one of those odd seasons. So there you go, Jason. We've got to talk about Arizona State coming into Omaha in a couple of weeks. As of this recording, Arizona State is 17-11-2 overall and 12-7-1 in conference play. They are currently 15th in the Pairwise rankings. They are currently third in the nation on the power play at 82.4%. And they are currently third in the nation in goals scored with 110. They average 3.7 goals per game. Jason, what are your initial thoughts here on the Arizona State Sun Devils, their first year as NCHC members? I got to tell you, I had a great time on that trip last fall to Tempe to watch UNO play at Arizona State. And when St. Thomas joins the conference in 2026, we're going to be Arizona State's travel partner. So we will play home and home series every season against Arizona State. And I would like to thank whoever made that happen, because that is going to be amazing to get to go to the greater Phoenix area every season.
You really want to be there right now in the dead of winter with the snow, right?
I got to tell you, I would be willing to go play in the playoffs on the road if we got to go to Arizona State. It'd be a tough turnaround to get a plane ticket, but man, that's the one place I'd be like, let's surrender home ice to somebody else and let's go play Arizona State in the Mullet Ice Arena down there.
Yeah, I mean, I love having them in the NCHC. It's been a good fit. They're a good team. Um, you know, they're having good offense, right? And so I think that's why Omaha can have some success, is Simon on his game can shut down the best of the best. And I think that if we can play our transition game, if we can get that first pass, play with some possession that we didn't play with against Denver and we didn't do against Western Michigan, this is not a team that we can't beat. I think we definitely have the ability to do it.
Yeah, the Arizona State is an intriguing team coming in, Jason. They are led by head coach Greg Powers, who's done a terrific job with that program. He is 147, 159, and 24 in 10 seasons. And he has led Arizona State to the NCAA tournament twice. Some players to watch here, because fans always tell us how much they enjoy me pointing out some of these players, and there's lots of good players on that team. Grad forward Lucas Sillinger, who was originally an Omaha recruit, leads the team in points with 8 goals and 24 assists. He has tallied at least 1 point in the team's last 7 games. Second on the team in points is grad forward Artem Schlang, who's from Russia, which is interesting. You don't find a lot of guys playing in college hockey or from Russia. He played both at UConn and Northern Michigan before finally landing at Arizona State. He has 13 goals and 18 assists. Senior forward Ryan Kerwin, a transfer from Penn State, has the most goals on the team and is third on the team in overall points with 19 goals and 11 assists. But they've got several solid forwards, including Bennett Shimmick and freshman Cullen Potter. And on the blue line, defenseman Noah Beck, who transferred in from Clarkson, has 4 goals and 22 assists. And in net, senior Luke Pavicic, who transferred from UMass Lowell, and junior Gibson Homer have been splitting time. Pavicic has a 2.37 goals against average and a .912 save percentage. And Homer has a 2.64 goals against average and a .913 save percentage and 2 shutouts this season.
I think this is going to matter to the guys. I think that Oma's going to come in this. They're going to know where they are. They know what they need to do at home with the crowd at Baxter. And I think they're going to find a way to get 2 wins out of this. And, welcome to the NCHC Arizona State, and kind of see where they fall. And It's not going to be easy, but I think we can do it. I think we've got the game to do it. If we don't have Harrison though, like that changes my opinion a lot, I think. And that's the tough thing is to think like, what is that going to be like for Omaha if you don't have his ability in the face-off. He's been by like hands down by far our best centerman when it comes to winning face-offs this season, and so that'll be a huge loss if we don't have him for that. Possibly getting Tanner back, I think will be a huge jump for the guys and a real shot to the arm for him. And so if he's able to make his comeback and start that against Arizona State at home, that's another wrinkle in the plan. And so it's hard not knowing the answers to those questions. But I'm going to be optimistic and say that Omaha finds a way to sweep Arizona State at home. What are your thoughts on it, John?
Jason said UNO was going to sweep, and I think UNO is going to sweep as well. I think they're going to get it done. Their final regular season action at Baxter Arena. But as Jason alluded to, the status of Harrison Israels is going to have a factor on this team in some way, shape, or form. And it'll be interesting to see if we get Tanner Ludke back in the lineup, because we had heard he might return to the lineup for the Arizona State series. We'll just have to see. Both games will be at 7:07 p.m. Central Time at Baxter Arena on February 28th and March 1st. The Friday night game will be Leap for a Cure night, Jason. So we will assume at that point that they will be in the process of auctioning off the gray jerseys online. So stay tuned for that. Saturday's game is slated to be a whiteout. It's also senior night. So there's a whiteout coming up, Jason.
Woohoo!
We'll see. We will see what kind of promotion they have for the whiteout nights.
It'll be a good time. Fans should be at the game. You don't want to miss this. It's gonna be a good set. And the auction for Leap for a Cure is always a good event. And it's always a good time.
Well, and I'll tell you, this being our last regular season home series of the season, if you want to come out to the game and you haven't come out to the game, be sure to take time to come out. There's not much hockey left this season. I know we've been talking the last couple of weeks about home playoffs, but you just never know what's going to happen. So if you've been thinking about coming to a series, get out for this Arizona State series. It should be a lot of fun.
Don't wait for home playoffs. Those still may not happen. So get out and see Arizona State at home and make sget you see a game.
I know. I feel like because we talked about home playoff tickets last week, Jason, that it's not going to happen, that we jinxed it. We'll get to find out. Jason and I will be wearing the gray Nike Maverick hockey hoodies, trying to get some of that superstitious good luck going for the team. If you're not coming out, you can listen to the games on 1290 Coil in Omaha or online on the Varsity Network app. Mike Valancourt and Terry Leahy will have the call, and they do a terrific job. Friday and Saturday's games will be on NCHC TV for those who want to watch online. And be sure to follow Mavpuck on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all of our social channels. Bridget does a great job keeping you up to date during those series. But Jason, until next time, go Mavs.
Go Mavs.